morning again, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our next session of the CEO Roundtable webinars, hosted by the Middle East Council of Shopping Centers and Retailers. Our webinar today is titled World Review of Operations and Solutions Beyond COVID-19, a view from Stockholm, Moscow, and Los Angeles, with an idea of how to maybe perhaps reformat your shopping experience for your customers coming on. We're focusing on the responsibilities and successful new actions of retailers and shopping center owners reopening in the coming days, weeks, and months around the world. Our intent is to provide you with real stories about new ideas which have enabled others to take action. And then what we want is to have you take these ideas and reopen and gear up your business, utilizing this, the success that we've seen in the other places. Our experts today are, as I've said, from all around the world. So we're getting a global perspective on things, which is, I think, some of the people who have commented on what they'd like to see in our webinar series. They'd like to see sessions that highlight what is going on in other corners of the world, and that's what we're doing for you today. The Middle East Council of Shopping Centers and Retailers represents over 1,000 retailers and over 875 shopping centers. We have about 1,000 engaged members, and we've been working around with you now for the past 26 years. Our role, I think, as you know by now, is to help you to facilitate your business and to also to assist you to raise your personal and professional profiles of yourself and your company locally, regionally, and globally. Our funding is generated with networking events, certificate education programs, and conferences. So as you know, in the past, our events have been canceled, but we've got some good news coming along. We'd like to take this opportunity. Our team at the Middle East Council of Shopping Centers and Retailers are planning on relaunching our next live retail congress, Recon, to take place at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, DIFC in Dubai, on February the 7th, 8th, 9th, 2021. So we've been given the tentative go-ahead by the authorities in Dubai to go ahead and plan this. So I thought I wanted to share this with everyone as well to let them know right away that we're going back live again for our conference at the Ritz-Carlton DIFC, February 7th, 8th, and 9th. That's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday of 2021. We've advised the authorities, they've given us a go-ahead, and so now our team is working ahead on that. We'll continue to host our webinars weekly, and we are also gearing up for our first ever digital conference event on October the 25th and the 26th online. So that gives you an idea. We're very busy keeping the content rolling out and with our plans going forward. Our e-learning program also will commence the week of Sunday, May 17th, and more details to come out on this shortly. So we have many new initiatives, as you can see. We've been very busy organizing these events and education programs to keep you updated and with the latest information which you need to succeed in your business, whether you're in the shopping center business or whether you're in the retailer side of the business. All of our events that we're talking about, the webinars, are all free. And if you want to be participating in this, as some of our members have, some people have sent in some contributions to the organization, and we appreciate that very much. I also wanted to thank the Dubai Chamber for their work in spreading what we're doing with our webinars and using their database to let people from all over the world know what we're doing. So normally we have about 45 countries joining in with us, so it's been great. Our team is here for you. You just need to reach out to us and many of our platforms, either through email, LinkedIn, or other social media platforms. Our webinars like today, voice on demand retail podcasts, our video on demand retail YouTube video channels, and of course, you can always use your phone because I'm still picking up the phone. I'm handling a lot of calls every day, and I'm appreciating those calls that come in from you people as well. Let me introduce our experts again today who have joined us to help us understand better and more creative solutions for thriving and succeeding by seeing what the rest of the retail world is busy doing today. From Los Angeles, Sweden, and Moscow. First, from Los Angeles, Shannon has been in the business for over 20 years, focusing on shopping center management at super regional shopping centers, community centers, and even luxury boutique projects on Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills. She's with JLL currently, busy in LA, and she's working on a number of different projects there, trying to launch them in this otherwise difficult period. So she's also been one of our instructors at our events at the GVS educational program, and we're always thankful to have her support on that. Next, we have from Stockholm, Sweden, we have Magnus. Roxner, thank you, Magnus, again for being there. I appreciate your you joining us again today. COO of the SAFE company, and that is Safe Shopping Centers in Sweden is the name. Your experience, Magnus' experience, ranges from developing, managing, and operating shopping centers and mixed-use projects from the Nordic countries, Russia, and through the UAE as well. Magnus advises the industry organizations, asset managers and owners in Europe and Middle East and Africa on risk and resilience framework, operational risk strategies, and operational excellence. Thank you again, Magnus, for joining us today. Michael Ruckman also is joining us from Moscow today with over 20 years experience in real estate and banking markets from the USA, Russia, Spain, and 30 other countries globally. Michael is the world leader in delivering business strategies and fully transforming organizations. So the customer experience, brand loyalty, relationship management, delivering business model transformations are his specialties. Creating new business opportunities from the current pandemic challenges he will share with us today, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. Michael has also been one of the education people in our GVS programs, and we look forward to seeing a lot more of you coming in the future, Michael, and thank you for being here again with us. Please, Michael, why don't you kick off today, and I'll leave the floor to you now, and thank you for being here.
All right, thank you, David. It's a pleasure to be here, and I just want to start off by saying we kind of planned a little journey today, a little kind of storytelling to take us through a few different things that are happening in different markets and in the shopping center and retail industries, and maybe kind of paint a picture of an opportunity that's coming up, both for retailers and especially for shopping centers, where everybody seems to be a bit doom and gloom right now with everything kind of like everyone's kind of paralyzed. And we've been playing with the different parts with different clients and trying to pull together a picture that's actually maybe a little bit motivational and inspirational. So I'm going to start with what's happening first in office properties, because that creates a big problem for businesses and office properties, but there's an opportunity for shopping centers and retail environments coming out of that. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about is that. Then we'll go into a little bit of what's happening with people purchasing online and where the difficulties are going to be for shopping centers. And then we'll talk a bit about the opportunities coming out of this, because I'm a realist, but I'm actually an optimist as well. So it's difficult for me to constantly think about everything that's wrong without finding opportunity and finding the things that are probably going to be right if we take the steps now. Office properties, what's happened? Over the last couple of months, everybody's learned to work remotely and to be actually productive. So, and not only the individual work, but being able to communicate and collaborate over mediums like this and be effective with that. And so this creates an interesting thing. It's been going on for 6, 7, 8 weeks now. And they say it takes 21 days of consistent behavior to form a habit. So we've got enough time to form 2 already. So if we think about that, there's a significant behavior change that's going to come out of this, which is people have kind of adjusted to working remotely. Now, businesses, a lot of businesses on the planet are having tough financial times right now. And to think that businesses are not going to take advantage of the potential cost savings by reducing office space and having people work remotely is just naive. Any business owner is going to look at that and say, okay, if I don't need people to be in my office, I don't want to bring them back because that's just an additional cost. So we have two clients right now that are really actively going through this process of figuring out how they can keep people at home. So they've inventoried all of the positions, figured out the percentage of time that people spend working individually in the workspace, figuring out, looking at different positions and figuring out which ones actually need to collaborate in physical space and those that can actually communicate and collaborate remotely, and figuring out how many people they need to bring back. And then when they bring them back, what period of time do they need them back in the office for each week? Maybe it's not 5 days, maybe it's 1 day or 2 days. And the consensus seems to be that 1 day is probably enough for most positions, maybe 2 days for other positions, and so on. So there's potentially a 50, 60, 70% reduction in office space need from businesses. And this is going to create a major impact on the office properties. But then there's also a significant impact on the type of office space that you need. So we no longer will need vast spaces with individual workplaces. What we'll need are collaboration spaces and teamwork spaces more than anything else. And this has already been happening. I mean, a lot of the more progressive businesses have already been trying to be more Google-ish and trying to be more kind of agile and create these open office spaces for collaboration and so on. But I think that's gonna take it's going to speed all of it up. And so what's happening is businesses are going to capture this opportunity for cost reduction, and they're going to realize that they need to redesign their spaces so that they're more driven to collaboration and communication and teamwork. And the real thing here is what's missing from the remote work lifestyle is this opportunity for social context, team building, teamwork, and actually the ability to kind of form strong interpersonal relationships. So that's the only real reason that we need people to come back, and that short period of time is going to be really about getting people into spaces where they can collaborate. Now, I'll stop there on the office properties, but that creates an opportunity for shopping centers, and we're going to come back to that in a little bit. Now, what's happened with people? People, in terms of their shopping patterns and their shopping behavior, everybody's kind of learned, again, 21 days to form a habit, everyone's learned to buy everything online. So everybody's gotten very comfortable with the fact that I push a button and it gets delivered tomorrow or the day after. Everybody's gotten used to price comparison and shopping and finding the cheapest spot for it here and there, and so on. And this is going to create a lot of problems for the offline retailers and shopping centers, because we're going to have to lure people back in. The problems that are there, not only are we luring people, well, what we talked about on Monday, not only are we luring people back into a space where we have to keep them apart from each other and deal with their fear and the risk that's coming out of that, but people have learned to save time and money by buying online. Maybe they don't need to come back. And until the kind of family entertainment centers and things like that, until that's all back online, the reason to go back into a shopping center or go back to a retail store, it's not so compelling. And then the other thing out of this, we have a client that I was talking to yesterday, an online grocer, and they said they've been growing by 80 to 100% per month for the last couple of months, and they're operating. They could grow even more, but they're operating at 100% of their capacity. And so they just signed on a new warehouse so that they can increase their capacity and so on. But they know that when everything starts gradually coming back to normal, that they're going to have a drop off in online sales, because some people are going to go back to their old behavior. Not everybody, but some. So they're already, and this is only 2 months into this, they're already investing in ways to create more value online for those customers so that they don't lose them back to the offline retailers, back to the offline supermarkets when all this kind of starts going back to normal. So the online retailers are already thinking about this. What happens when people start going back to their old behavior? And they're working to maintain this new behavior. Now with that, I wanted to kind of give a couple minutes to Shannon to talk about a point of view of what this means for offline retailers and shopping centers. And then I'll come back and try to paint a bit of a picture of what this could look like 2-3 years from now. Shannon?
Thank you. And I'm back. Had a bit of a moment, so thanks. Unfortunately, I may be repeating some of what you said, Michael, because I wasn't able to hear you. But Yeah, absolutely. The habit takes 21 days, and we have certainly had well over 21 days to get comfortable with ordering everything online. You know, we were already coming up against that as shopping center managers and owners for some time. And not just, we were, before it was like mostly books, music, electronics, but now it's more of apparel and accessories and groceries and dinner. And I mean, for a big surprise, I actually bought a swimsuit online this week, which is unthought. I would not have been thinkable just a short time ago, and I was quite happy with it. So, you know, retailers have, online retailers for sure have got this new customer base, and they're going to do everything they can to keep it, even if they've got physical retail. And so now we have to, as retailers and shopping center managers, we really have to give them a reason to come back. And without that family entertainment offer, especially in markets like Dubai, that's going to be especially tricky. But the landlord and the retailer, they've got to work together to give them the motivation to return. And it needs to not just be about safe, which we talked about last time, but it also needs to be engaging, and it needs to resonate with the community, and it needs to satisfy that time well spent piece while also adding value to it. So for example, it means discarding the typical product-centric kind of transactional relationship that you have with your tenant, I'm sorry, with your customer, but also making it more more solution-based, where the goods or service that you're selling or the experience you're selling is wrapped around, it's got an entire solution wrapped around it. So for example, we use the expectant mother quite often in our conversation about this, because it's, you know, it's pretty easy to see the expectant parents and see that they need the goals, and if we can provide them with the things that help them. So checklists, budgeting, planning, navigation throughout the store, all of these different things that help them prepare for their significant life event. And we as shopping centers are able to do that, to curate these cross retailer relationships or transactions, I guess. So we need to figure those things out. But in the meantime, we've also got the problem of percentage rent. And I don't know if Michael spoke about this because, as I say, I had a little technical difficulty.
I did not. Go for it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So I think what we're going to see going forward is more showrooming and less full service retail spaces. So this will of course bring us this percentage rent problem again. And I don't know if anybody's ever come up with the perfect solution for that. I certainly did a lot of research today to see if anybody did, but I haven't seen it. So, you know, there are a lot of good reasons to have a percentage rent clause, and they're not all about being able to collect that additional revenue. That, of course, that's the hope and the objective of it. But there's also the ability to understand the health of your tenant and the health of your shopping center, and to use that information as a leasing tool. So we're going to have to be more creative about how we do that. And I think with showrooming, there is an opportunity to do that, but you also need to tie into that expectation of expediency. So, well, let me get back to that in a second, but the percentage rent bit it can be easily tracked through perhaps an app or some other technical, you know, prop tech device. And then it can even, if somebody buys something, it can even go to the distribution center, and then they can take it from the distribution center. And when I get into the distribution center, then I'm kind of getting into the logistics bit. And I think Michael wanted to speak more to that, and is probably better served to come from him.
Okay, thank you. So one of the things that we've been playing with here also is this concept of reformatting. So if there's going to be more of this, let's say, try on, buy online, or check it out in the store and then think about it for a day and buy online and so on, that problem with percentage rent is going to become more and more apparent. And the retailers really don't have much motivation to try and track that or find a solution. So this is more, and on Monday, Rob had a comment about, how do we finally claw back and make sure that all these transactions are happening in the physical space. And our opinion on this is that maybe we take it a step further and say, okay, that's a battle that nobody's won over the last 10, 12 years, and it just keeps getting worse. And this is going to accelerate that problem because of the new behavior and people feeling perfectly comfortable buying online and having it delivered and so on. So what is a potential new model? Maybe this is about the shopping center taking on the ability to organize cross retailer solutions. So you're getting ready for your 25th anniversary. You probably need things from multiple retailers. You're having a dinner party. You probably need things from multiple retailers. You're getting married. You're probably having a baby, whatever. You probably need things from multiple retailers. And a shopping center in an app can actually help you to plan for and realize these purchases, but they could even guide you through the space. You hold up your phone and your navigation is now in your phone instead of, in addition to, signs and so on. So that's one thing. And then the shopping center could also have a marketplace and a distribution center so that retailers could reformat and have, kind of a demo center, showroom type thing, and not have all the inventory on site, but have all the inventory in a logistics center operated by the shopping center that can deliver this stuff within hours. Because people that have gotten so used to pushing a button and having stuff delivered home are going to less and less want to carry stuff around after they buy it. It's going to be much easier to go, yeah, I'll have one of those and one of those and just deliver it tomorrow. And if I don't need it today, then that's very convenient, and I can go about my life and do other things in the center without having to carry a bunch of bags around. So I think these behavioral changes represent a significant opportunity, and this opportunity to control the logistics and delivery, the shopping center could actually put this together in a radius around their center and have it be significantly cheaper than what a retailer would pay deliver, and everybody's giving free delivery now. So what the retailer would pay to deliver it from their logistics center individually to a customer in several different cities and so on. So this is a huge opportunity that should be explored. My guess is that you could even give it away at cost, because the upside will be on capturing all of this percentage rent that you haven't been able to capture before. Now, the other thing that I mentioned coming out of office, the dilemma for office space properties, businesses are going to need collaboration space. And if I'm a good business owner or CEO or HR director or whatever, I'm going to want to bring those people back to spaces where, if they're driving all the way in, maybe we want to get them to a space where they can satisfy some other needs while they're there as well. And so bringing them not to a dry, bland office space, but bringing them to an entertainment center that maybe has collaboration space. So think about it. Retailers are going to reformat. That's going to free up a lot of space because they'll need about half the footprint if they're not warehousing in their stores. It's going to free up a lot of space in the shopping center. Maybe we convert that space into community space and collaboration space for businesses. And that brings in new traffic into the center. And so you could see, what's already been a transition from the old 80% retail, 20% experience model. It's already moving in the direction closer to kind of 40, 60, 50, 50, and so on in a lot of regions. But maybe that speeds up as well, and maybe we end up with the space being even more about food and beverage, restaurants, lifestyle things, health and beauty, entertainment, collaboration, community spaces, and so on. And this may give shopping centers, for the first time, a really good reason to manage the direct relationships with the visitors to their centers. Shopping centers historically have always been very passive with the visitors and active about managing the tenants, the relationships with the tenants. And this could be the opportunity to bring that back and have their own marketplace and their own relationship with customers and so on, and give the retailers the opportunity to reformat and take less space, and it becomes a more efficient model for everybody. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. sorry if that was a little bit long-winded.
No, thank you, Michael, and there's some good ideas in there as well, so I appreciate that, and those thoughts I think will be meaningful for a lot of the retailers to think of what to do with the excess space if it comes available. So it's all good thoughts. And you're right, there's always the glass is always half full. So there's always something out there that we want to look for that's going to be an advantage to what we've already got. So I appreciate that. It's great. Magnus, up in Stockholm, you've been listening to all of this, and tell me what your views are vis-a-vis percentage rent and these kinds of thoughts.
Well, I think as we brought up yesterday as well, I mean, this is, I think it's a hard nut to crack, so to speak. And as Michael said, you know, we've been trying to find a solution for this for quite some time. And I saw also some questions and comments in the chat that the percentage rent is a tricky question. There's something the landlord wants, and sometimes we might have questions about, you know, how it's represented and so on. And I think, you know, going forward, I think to have a super transparent solution, being able to work with both online and offline sales, I think that, you know, whoever will be able to step in and kind of owning the transaction infrastructure, that is something that we have to look on. You know, how can we?
Magnus, I've lost your audio feed.
So let's see. Do you hear me now?
You okay?
Hello.
Yeah, that's better. I can hear you now.
Yeah. So, well, just to recapture, I don't know where you lost me, but I think, you know, trying to find solutions where the retailer steps in and starts owning the transactions platform or the infrastructure where the actual purchases takes place, that I think would be the only way forward to kind of capturing both online and offline sales. I haven't seen anyone yet doing that. I had a discussion yesterday also with Rob, who asked the questions in the other seminar. So it is a challenge for sure, for sure.
Okay, thank you. One of the other things that we had a question on a couple of days ago was to do with family entertainment centers and the reopening sequence and the timing, and then how that's actually going to work. And I know at your company, Safe Environments, there has been some discussion that way, some thoughts, and I know Stockholm might be a little different than maybe the UAE, but please give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so let me just start up with that, you know, taking a little bit, you know, the Stockholm view on it. Yes, we are different from you in many cases, especially maybe, you know, environmental wise, it's easier for us to go outside and play during summertime, during wintertime, and so on. So the need maybe for family entertainment centers in that sense is not the same. However, you know, we have a lot of big operators as well in the country, and the largest one of them closed down voluntarily mid of March, and not because it was implied by the government or anything like that, but it's just that, you know, people were simply not showing up. So looking at, you know, how can we actually start working with the entertainment centers again? Well, it is a challenge because as they are right now, they are designed to touch, play, interact, which is exactly what we are trying to avoid right now. Yeah. And besides, they are mainly focused on children, which we know it's difficult to control. So looking at, you know, how can we do this when we start to open up? Well, number one is we have to be controlled somehow. And that means probably, you know, we have to open up gradually. High touch areas, ball pits, soft play areas, etc. will probably remain closed for quite some time. Maybe we can look at, you know, having limited visitors or private parties only. I see age restrictions, you know, so the youngest one will not be allowed to do there as we have right now in the malls in the UE. To somehow create a controlled environment in an environment where you don't want to have control, basically. Yeah? Shorter sessions, obviously, with cleaning in between, but I also see, you know, it's a possibility to kind of changing what we're doing right now. Because I'm not sure that the entertainment centers we're seeing today will ever look like that again in the future sometime. I think we will see a bigger increase of augmented and virtual reality and so on, things where we can activate kids without having to touch, to feel and so on, or smaller kind of installations, kind of escape room setups and so on.
Okay. Mhm. That makes sense. One of the things that comes to mind for me is that after someone has touched one of these games or the game console or have gone on a ride, for instance, there's got to be some way that's maybe more efficient to keep these rides and other events running more reasonably. Is there any thought that you have on that?
The ones that we have been speaking to doesn't really have anything less than increased cleaning, and I think looking forward to. I know that someone has asked when can we open up, and I think going back to what Michael discussed earlier, it's 21 days to get used to a new habit. Now we see that a lot of countries has been closed down. If we compare it to schools, for example, where we normally would have a very, very big trust in schools, we see that countries opening up right now, parents there are kind of reluctant to let kids go back to the school because they don't really feel that they are safe there. And I think that would be a good benchmark when we talk about when can we start opening up entertainment centers. And I don't see that will happen before we open up the schools, because having a parent putting the trust in the entertainment center to take care of your kids, it will not come before they entrust the schools to handle their kids. So that would be kind of the first indicator, I would say. And then it's a question of how fast can we get people used to engaging with other people? When do we feel comfortable about it? And I think that the worst case that we can see in time-wise would be when we have a vaccine.
Okay, makes sense. I've had another point of view presented to me, Magnus, and maybe you can give me a thought on it. And it was from a science perspective, and then you look at the mortality rates of those below 20 years old. It was a wide range. It doesn't start at 5 or 6 with the FECs, for instance, but it goes from 20 down to young children. But the actual mortality rate globally is minuscule. Like there's really not much consideration at all. I don't know how much science is going to play with this idea, but if you use just strictly a scientific statistical model, here's what's happened. It seems like it's not reasonable to keep it closed down that way if the mortality rate from those who are below 20 years old remains at that level. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Well, I think we see new science coming up more or less every day. Well, the last thing now is the mutated virus that is spreading in the US, and even if the mortality rate of young kids is basically 0, they are still being able to contract the virus and also spreading it along. So it's not only about taking care of the kids, but it's also making sure that we don't spread the virus further on.
I see. Makes sense. Makes sense. Michael, back to you again in Moscow. What's the update there? I mean, on Monday when you were chatting with us, you were saying that it was pretty dire. I'm looking at the statistics and it seems like it's getting more prevalent again.
Yeah.
Is there anything in particular that you can shed light on in that regard? And especially with respect to opening the subways, and the metros, and the shopping centers, what's your perspective?
I think so. I probably have a bit of an interesting perspective. I think everybody's really overreacted globally with the kind of mortality thing, because if we think about it, there really hasn't been, let's say, good testing in most places on the planet. Maybe South Korea is a good example, Hong Kong is a good example, and so on. But there really haven't been this kind of flood of examples of good systemized testing of the population. So there's a lot of estimates that the actual number of cases is probably 10 to 15 times more than what we actually see. And I think here's a really good example of that. I got tested last Saturday, actually. So it turns out I had been sick 3 times since New Year's. And I thought, oh, of course, I've absolutely had it. But it turns out I haven't. So I don't have the antibodies and I don't have the RNA either. So it turns out I'm still at risk. But I think the fact that there hasn't been enough testing, a friend of mine had a friend of his die a couple of weeks ago, and all the symptoms of coronavirus, and they classed it as pneumonia. And so things are happening here that don't give a clear picture. But I think that the biggest risk, I think the mortality is not so scary. The biggest risk is that this thing is so contagious that it disables the healthcare system. And then people who otherwise wouldn't die from other things like car accidents and heart attacks and things like that, they won't be able to get the care that they need. And there will be a lot of secondary deaths out of that. And that's where I think the risk is. I don't think that it's like, wow, coronavirus is killing millions of people. It's more the secondary effect of crippling the healthcare system, because this thing is so contagious and people can be spreading it without knowing that they have it. And that, okay, I think is the risk here. And I really don't think we have a clear picture of what the problem is here. So
yeah, I understand. And Shannon, in Los Angeles, I know that there's been a lot of fear. You're on mute there still, but maybe give me some sense, and the rest of our participants here, give us some sense as to what you're thinking.
Well, you know, it's funny how quickly things change, because the last time we talked was just Monday, and I said I didn't think we'd open up or start to do anything until the end of June, even though the stay-at-home order now is until the 15th. But as of, I think it must have been Tuesday, the governor said we're going to start to phase 2, which means that we're going to start opening non-essential businesses. And that includes apparel and beauty, and restaurants are still going to be able to do, but it's all curbside pickup. So from a shopping center perspective, we're pulling our hair out trying to figure out how can we keep from having a global pandemic to having a local parking rage, sort of curbside pickup sort of rage. So we're starting to look at the operational sides of opening these up in different stages and in different ways. So there's that. We have the statistics out today for us, for US, or I'm sorry, for California, shows a slight decrease in the number of people in ICU. All the other numbers are up. The number of suspected or confirmed cases and the number of people in the hospital, but ICU is less. And so that's something. I mean, we're getting there. The governor's taking and the city is taking a very stepped approach to it. And most people, unlike in some of the other states here, are okay with that and are living with it and understand why we're doing it, why it's being done. But yeah, thankfully we don't have people storming our state building with AK-47s.
No, that's good. That's a good thing.
Yeah, California's a little different, thank goodness. So yeah, so I think, you know, we're moving slowly, but I think it's the right way to go.
Okay, thank you. Justin, I know you're in the background somewhere there, and I know that I've seen a couple of hands raised. Will Adwarka, I know Will, thank you for joining us. I've seen a couple of questions on the chat line and a hand raised. Justin, do you want to introduce anybody who has a question for our panel?
Hi, David. Good morning. The first question we have is from Will. Will Adwarka, please go ahead.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me. Man, I have many questions. I have a hard time to pick the one which I want to ask because there's so much great stuff here. So I'm going to start with the first one. Do we have too many shopping centers in the near future? I personally believe we're going to see a lot of shopping centers going under because the variety of offers might not be needed anymore. So my question would be, what are we doing with the space? And I'll leave this to Michael, Magnus, or Shannon to answer, whoever is best for that. In regards to collaboration, in a time where people are freaking out that proximity is a threat, would it not be actually for a majority of people that there is a certain distance people looking for just naturally for the sheer fact that they don't know what will happen to them? Because as long as nobody goes on media and says, you're safe, here's a vaccine, you don't need to worry, hug yourself, kiss yourself, whatever you like, you might always be in fear of somebody else having the virus, since we now know that everybody can contract it, regardless if young or old, and there is no, you cannot basically single groups out. That will be the second, and I'll ask the third one, if you allow me, on percentage rents. I mean, my experience with real estate across the world is very, very kind of, you know, is a mixed bag. Usually percentage rents work best when there is trust between the landlord and the tenant. In a society where that trust has never developed, and it's actually, I keep to myself what is mine, how do you see this developing? Do you think there's a realistic shift in thinking from a landlord point of view to suddenly see percentage rents as the way forward? That's it. Thank you very much, guys.
Okay, well, there's 3 questions, and Shannon, I think you might be best placed to answer the first question, if you recall it.
No, I might have to. Could you restate it for me, Will? I'm sorry. It's late here. Could you say the question?
The first one.
Yeah, of course. In regards to shopping centers, first question was, do we have too many shopping centers? I see a lot of shopping centers might go bust. What are we doing with the space?
Got you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, it depends on where you're talking about. Who has too many shopping centers? I think, yes, you're right. We have too many shopping centers. Some of them were ill-advised in their original development. I think we can all agree to that, and especially in emerging and developing markets. And I think that they're going to need to reformat, as Michael has said, to something else. So we're going to be looking at shopping centers that do more than just retail transactions. And they're going to be, there may be medical, it may be a community gathering place, as it was once. You know, I'm old enough to remember when that was a big deal, and that's what it was, and it was built for that. So there are going to be a lot of different ways that we can take up that space in multi-use formats, and looking at residential, at all of these. You know, we're looking at all these multi-format shopping centers happening already, you know, complexes. Apologies, I can't find the words.
Mixed use
You understand
projects.
what I'm saying? It's going to be a reformat, and it will cull what shouldn't have been done in the first place, and what will stand will remain stronger. That's what I truly believe.
Okay, and Magnus in Stockholm, and I honestly have not been to your corner of the world yet, so I'm not sure of the density of shopping centers. What's your perspective on Will's question about too many shopping centers?
I totally agree, and even though we're not saturated in Stockholm area yet, but definitely, I mean, that will be the normal consequence of, we see a lot of retailers now closing down and going bankruptcy. You know, there will not be the demand to have someone else filling up that space immediately. So definitely we will see demoling, we will see transformation into other use of the assets and so on. So for me, I see this inevitable. Okay,
thank you. Will, your second question, or your third question, was percentage rent. Yeah. And that was how is this going to come together? How is this going to work? Is that, generally speaking, you said there was something about percentage rent is based best when there's a great relationship, a trust relationship between the parties.
It is.
And now going forward, we see that we have a lot of, it's just a different idea, a different mindset, because retailers are struggling. They may not want to share all of this before that they might have been more able to. Michael Ruckman, do you have any thought about percentage rent and where we're going with this?
Yeah, I think, well, actually, I have an answer to all 3 questions.
Okay, let it rip.
Yeah. You know me.
You're on your game today.
Yeah, I'm never short of an opinion, I guess. So I think there are a lot of countries where there really are too many shopping centers. I mean, the one that came to my mind immediately was the Czech Republic. You know, a country with 10 million people, and there's just a shopping center it seems like every kilometer. You know, and it's unbelievable. It's unrealistic to think that each one can be full. And so the more they add, they're just cannibalizing each other. And I agree with Shannon 100% that this is a huge opportunity to reformat and to test and learn and figure out what's going to bring people back. And I think finally, this is the opportunity for shopping centers to really start managing the relationships, bring in a marketplace type feel to it, where the shopping center is actually driving transactional volume, as well as the individual retailers with their demo centers and so on, and bringing some of the office space population into a collaboration space makes that really an interesting kind of reformat idea. And it also, if the shopping centers are actually managing the relationship, managing a marketplace, online, offline, I mean, the shopping center is really an offline marketplace, an ecosystem. Adding the online component to it, they can own a lot of that transactional volume that was today owned by the retailers, and the shopping center has to constantly try to claw it back. So that could be a new model that solves the problem. And maybe it's not percentage rent anymore. Maybe they actually take a percentage off the sales that go through the marketplace in exchange for percentage rent that they were trying to get a percentage of the sales before. So that model changes quite a bit. Your proximity thing, I think, is 100% real, and that's very real for the next period of time until there's a vaccine. So that was why we're presenting this idea. This is kind of a medium long-term thing. It's kind of like we could be testing these things today to see how they're going to work, but I think it's going to unfold over the next couple of years. And the opportunity is if shopping centers can capture some of that office space population to bring the traffic back in on a regular basis. And then the percentage rent thing, I think I already answered. I think proximity is going to be one of the most difficult things for offline retailers and shopping centers over the next 6 to 9 months. Hopefully there's a vaccine by then.
Thank you, Michael. Justin, there was another hand raised, another question. Can you fill us in?
Before we go to EHAB, we have Luai Yusuf. She wasn't able to raise the hand button, but Luai came first. Luai, please go ahead.
Morning,
yes,
Luai.
Good morning, David. Good morning, everyone. And thank you for those fruitful webinars. I think it's a very good idea that we are communicating all together, sharing thoughts and previous practices. Regarding the percentage rent, we have experienced that in Egypt back when I joined in 2016. Egypt had some inflation and the import was a big issue for retailers. They had some of the retailers came to us and said that our containers have been queued for months in the ports, so we cannot get our products on time, and we have an issue in the sales, and our sales are getting down. So we started to apply percentage rents with some brands, and it was really good for both of them, for the retailers, because we had them out for around I think 2 years, and then their sales started to pick up again, and it ended up working great for both parties. So it's a good practice. And regarding the trust of retailers giving their exact sales and stuff like that, you can always have a statement of account from their banks. You can implement your POS system over the retailers. It's a bit costly for the developers, but it will end up good for both parties. You help them out in their struggling times, and then it will come back to you good as a mall owner or a developer in the future. And another, it is great. And another thing about the retail space and the business, I think all companies will have to reassess their strategy in employment in the near future. Working from home has been proven in many areas that it is good. So I think it's going to be for big companies, it's going to be some kind of money saving, because they will people, when they work from home, you can have a restudy for the salaries. I mean, you're not paying transportation anymore. You're not paying rents for big office spaces. It will kind of work well. It's a period that everybody has to put their hands together and show some positivity in the near future. And I hope it will pass soon. In the next coming 3 to 6 months, things will come back again normally. And it was really good news from you today to hear out that Feb is going to be the next event for MESC.
Yes, thank you. February 7th, 8th, and 9th in 2021.
This is encouraging and great.
The year of
Thank you.
resilience, Louis. May we all make it there. Be resilient. Thank you. Back to you,
Thank
Justin.
you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Louis. Next, we have Ehab Kamil. Ehab, please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, very good. How are you doing, Ehab?
I'm fine. I'm fine. Magnus, Michael, Shannon, definitely, and the team. Thank you very much for this sessions. It's very fruitful, actually, for us. I think everyone is talking about 6 to 9 months, so we have all the time to discuss many points. I think one of the most important point, I think Michael, he mentioned on Monday that what we are facing at the moment and all the challenges with all the visitors coming to the shopping malls, the whole thing, I think this will require that we reconsider the design of the future shopping mall. Mm-hmm. He mentions this point specifically. Mm-hmm. I think this is very important. I know that we don't have the time for this point, but I believe this is very important point that we need to tackle deeply for the future shopping malls, and what's the ideas that need to be considered in the design of new shopping malls. There was very important point. We just talked about it, like the pop-up shops in the parking, maybe mm-hmm. for pickups for the online businesses. Maybe this will be an opportunity actually for the malls to monitor part of the online services. Lots of ideas, I think definitely the gentlemen and the lady, they can come up with that we can consider in the future, in the design of future shopping malls. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ehab. Thank you, Ehab. It's great. Michael, I think one of the next sessions we'll have with you, we don't have time today to go through it all, but one of the next sessions that I would like you to start considering in the future is how do we, with existing infrastructure, with the existing shopping center, how do we use that existing structure in the most efficient way financially to manage the new normal beyond the pandemic?
I think that's a great topic, and the thing is really going to be interesting. I don't think this is like a okay, on November 1st we need a new format, let's invest millions and millions of dollars of reformatting. I think it can be managed as an evolution because the changes in behavior, in purchasing patterns, in visit frequency and things like that, those are going to be unfolding over the next 6 to 9 months. And during that period of time, the centers that are actually testing and learning and figuring out how to kind of map a trend in the behavior, they should be able to start mapping the things that they need to reformat. And it can be almost like an evolution. It doesn't have to be a revolution of we need everything new immediately. Let's run and kill the old and bring in the new and so on. Yeah. I don't think it needs to be that. I think it can be a little bit more scientific in looking at the actual behavior. And I think there's a huge opportunity here for shopping centers to actually start creating dialogue, using data, getting the transactional volume on their own platforms in parallel with this kind of gradual reformatting that's going to happen. I think a lot of it will be driven by retailers initiating reformats of their own, and the shopping center saying, okay, now I've got a bunch of extra space. What do I do with it? Do you shut down the north wing, or do you figure out what to do there?
Yeah, I understand. Justin, I think we have a couple more hands raised. Do you want to please introduce the next questions?
Sure. The next one we have is Rob Gaunt. Rob, please.
Morning, all.
Morning.
Hi, Rob.
Very interesting.
How are you doing?
Very interesting discussion. Michael, I think you're spot on. I think that the process is an evolving one, but as it evolves, I think as opposed to us, lobbing off limbs at a time, I think it calls for a level of agility that is almost an organism that modifies itself based upon the prevailing circumstances. Certainly, the scale of economies within shopping malls are going to be affected. Simple things like the ratio of parkings to building. These equations are changing, and it may be that what we assumed to be the reality previously may require us not necessarily to do away with that reality, but to allow for agile spaces outside that allow for greater enhancement and so on. Certainly, I would see us needing to look at things like the reduction of utility costs based upon population densities dropping. The fact is that we won't need as much air conditioning, as much electricity, as much lumens in certain areas. Our bathroom areas won't be as utilized. We won't be using as much water or drainage. And whilst these are not necessarily things that we wish to think of in the context of our spaces not being occupied, we want them to be occupied when they're alive and vital and busy. These are exciting spaces to be in. But to provide that level of agility for us to control our MEP environments and allow landlords to be more cost effective by affording themselves this level of agility would I think be another way of tackling this. I just wanted to say one last thing with regards to this discussion on turnover clauses, as we would refer to it locally, and the not the struggle, but certainly the thrust and parry between online environments which are further upstream and those which we would like to claw back within the individual shopping centers. I think that there is an opportunity to create, in inverted commas, the high street virtually, in the sense that people are as per our discussion the other day, people are very, very loyal to their local infrastructure, their local retailers, their local products, butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers. And I think that we could probably create a hybrid that would allow us to derive benefits from both those that come into the malls and those that stay out of the malls but would like to stay loyal to those malls.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Rob. That's all good points. I appreciate those very much. Justin, I think we have a couple of more raised hands, a couple of questions. We're getting on the end of our time. Justin, go ahead.
Yes, yeah. Thanks so much, Rob, earlier. The next one we have is from Baiju Kriyash, the CEO of Buzz Management and Marketing Consulting. Baiju, please.
Thank you, Justin.
Hi, Baiju.
Let me see. Hi. Hello, David. Thank you, David, for putting this together. Fantastic effort. And we've learned a lot, and it's a great forum to discuss ideas. My question is to Shannon or Michael. So I'm actually going to represent our events and activations division, and I'm asking these questions on behalf of them. It is interesting to learn about the projection from Shannon that there is going to be a trend that the malls will also be space for showrooms, and I assume that it's therefore going to be more experiential in the coming months and years. Does this mean that activations is something that we do for our retailers and various malls, etc., and experiential marketing is going to grow as well, because that's a way in which that we're going to differentiate, or we're going to take advantage of the online platforms that we have and offer something even more. Okay, now, if that is so, I have this question both interesting from that perspective for everyone, but also from an events perspective. What are the safe measures that we should consider when we are getting into, because there's going to be a lot of consumer interaction and involvement. If we were to start the experiential marketing activations in the malls, where we're going to engage brands and retailers and making it more advantageous for them, what are the safe measures that we should consider in doing this safely for everyone involved?
Thank you, Baiju. Magnus, that's his whole business in Stockholm. Why don't we have a couple of perspectives? Maybe Magnus, do you want to start, then Michael or Shannon after?
Yeah, well, as we've been talking a little bit about previously, I think a lot of things is right now connected to trust. But moving forward now, when organizing events and so on, obviously we will have to take in consideration what kind of restrictions we have from the government in place, but also kind of how do we actually work with social distancing in a crowd, and that is super tricky, but that is queue management, it's separation of visitors and so on, and how do we interact or acting with maybe merchandising, which will also be a question of how can we make sure that we don't have high touch areas, although we want to display or we want to experience things. So I don't think we have a really solid answer to it do like this, but making some kind of risk assessment, go through all the different steps that you have in your activation, and then see how can we mitigate all the different risks in different steps.
Thank you, Magnus. Michael, any thoughts?
Yeah, I would say the experiential marketing thing is interesting because it doesn't always have to be experience like hype. So the concept of emotionally engaging people in something that's going to drive sales is interesting. There's also the concept of adding value in planning tools, budgeting tools, like checklists, things like that can actually help people to plan for and realize life events. So if a shopping center could, for example, give me, maybe I'm in a retailer and I scan something because I like it, but I don't want to buy it today, but they give me a tool and an app that's my wish list, or maybe I want to wait until that comes on sale and then I'll buy it, and so on. These are additional sources of value that add to a longer term customer experience, and it can be expanded from the experiential marketing to things that are actually creating value and creating ongoing dialogue with the customers. So I would take it much farther than just the experiential marketing and say that there's an opportunity here for a larger, more complex customer experience in a relationship with the center. So
thank you. Shannon, any thoughts on Beju's question?
Yeah, well, I absolutely, of course, agree with Michael and Magnus, and I would say that likely what you're going to find is that it's just going to be baby steps. It's going to be it's going to be testing, and it's going to be saying, okay, let's try this. It's going to be a lot of that because we just don't have a handle yet on how people are going to react. The operational part is challenging, but it's not impossible. That can always be handled. But it's more of the psychological bit. And we talked about on Monday, the safety theater piece, about people seeing that you're cleaning, that they know that it's happening, that people are on stage doing that thing. And the more that's shown, the more comfortable people will be coming to visit you where that's happening. So I would just say that, go ahead and plan, but know that it's all going to need to be, you've just got to remain agile. That's the word, fluid, flexible, agile, whatever it is. You got to be able to move with the moment and know that maybe what you did last time doesn't work anymore. And that you may figure that out by trial and error as well.
Thank you, Shannon. Beju, does that cover the answers you're hoping?
Of course. Thank you so much.
All right. Pleasure. Thank you for joining. Now back to the panel. We're over time here a little bit, and I think, Justin, we're no more questions, as I understand.
Yes, there are no more raised hands at the moment.
Okay. Thank you very much. So going to Magnus, Michael, and Shannon, any last thoughts before we wind up?
Well, I think, I normally take on the position as being a little bit, maybe not pessimistic, but very cautious. But at the same time, we are painting up a picture that maybe is not so super bright for everyone. But at the same time, we have to realize that there are opportunities out there. There are possibilities. When we're talking about, people working from home, that all of a sudden opens up possibilities for retail, restaurants and so on in completely different areas maybe than that has been required previously. So I think also not just, inventory all the problems, but trying to find solutions and, what kind of possibilities does this new pattern of living, working, shopping and so on gives me, and how can I leverage on that?
Thank you, Magnus. Yeah, well, good points. Shannon, anything further you have in your end?
I agree with Magnus. I think it's just going to be eating the elephant by bites. You know, we're going to take this opportunity, try things out, and you know, there is, and I don't want to disregard the amount of pain and suffering people are going through economically, but if we can, it's going to sound bad, but put it to the side a little bit and all the reasons about what we can't do. And this is something Michael has taught me about, because from my property management background, I'm always looking for the reasons why I'm going to get sued or something like that. And Michael's like, no, knock that out and just think about the possibilities. Yeah. And so as people who manage property, we're always looking for the roadblocks and how do we get past the roadblocks. Let's sit down for a minute and let's brainwash with your team. Figure out what is it we could do? Where are the possibilities? And it could be very exciting. And those possibilities could actually help those people who are suffering economically.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Michael, any last thoughts?
Well, Shannon stole my speech, but no. The only thing I would say is this is with 25 years doing business transformation. One thing that I've recognized is that anytime there's anything that resembles a crisis, it's a time that we should be trying to find the opportunities coming out of it. Anything that resembles a crisis or really is one is going to bring change. And right now we're in the middle of a time of uncertainty. So we have to kind of move step by step and say, okay, let's gradually unfold and understand what this new reality is going to be coming out of it. As I said on Monday, the idea that everything's just going to go back to normal in a minute, you know, and we'll all go back to the way it was, it's just not going to happen. So the only thing we can really do is prepare ourselves for what the potential new reality is coming out of this, and test and learn as we're kind of unfolding and understanding this new environment. And so I think there's going to be a number of shopping centers and retailers that will probably go bankrupt because they're paralyzed and they can't get past this initial kind of barrier. And there's going to be other ones who are a bit more forward thinking and are saying, okay, stabilize, and then let's look around and see what's going on and figure out how we're going to thrive in what comes out of this. One thing I would say, if I compare what happened after 2008 in the global financial crisis and what I'm seeing right now, in 2008, people were paralyzed for 2008, 2009, and paralyzed for just a very long period of time, and there was no movement. And I would say in Moscow with our clients here right now, it's about 50-50. It's about half of our clients that are paralyzed and can't see past, you know, tomorrow. And the other half are saying, well, look, this is a great time to start considering the opportunities, and let's get people trained and let's start developing our staff. And they're already inventorying positions and figuring out what their new officing model is going to be, and so on. So I kudos to those people that are able to kind of stabilize and start looking a bit into the future and figuring out how they're going to benefit from this. It's painful now, but there is an upside.
Thanks, Michael. I appreciate it. And I want to thank Magnus, thank you, and Michael and Shannon, thank you for joining it. And I know I want to invite you now, so put it in the back of your mind. I'd love to have you on our e-learning series that we're just going to start off in May. And I think that there's something that all of you could add, and it would be very helpful if you had. So thank you. And I'd also like to thank our participants who have come and joined us today. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to see you there. And you know, thanks to the Middle East Council of Shopping Centers and Retailers team in the back of house hosting this whole thing. I really appreciate all of your efforts to make this work. Next Monday, we're bringing in solutions from an IT perspective on how to manage the aftermath of the pandemic, with maybe some great solutions that are available today. So on Monday, Dubai time, 11 o'clock, we are having some IT specialists in to talk about maybe there's an IT solution that might help you a little bit more as well. So that's all I have for you today, everyone. And thank you again for joining. Michael, Shannon, Magnus, thanks again, and the team, thank you. And we'll be in touch again soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Have a lovely day.
You too.